Take you now, Senator Curry. 4 minutes.
Thank you. Minister, I'm going to get right to the heart of matters this morning and talk about core funding and staffing issues for childcare providers. And this is based on engaging with a range of childcare providers in Dublin West of various types. All of them speak to overburdensome paperwork and financial reporting, accounting requirements that go far beyond their capacity and capability when everything is already transparent and submitted to the revenue. Admin that is getting in the way of relationships with parents and the real work of delivering quality care and education. The scale of non-contact time and the lack of funding for non-contact time is putting serious pressure on providers. Just speaking to a couple of providers, a smaller preschool told me that they stay up to midnight every night filling out paperwork themselves, maybe 2 to 3 hours every day. A larger provider said their centre managers spend 3 full days a week administering the schemes alone. Moving on to staff retention and recruitment. Childcare workers do not feel valued. They are leaving or they're not attracted to the sector. And the reality is they're not being paid enough for the work that they do. And I appreciate the rise in the ERO, but sadly it isn't enough to compete with other careers, and providers in Dublin West are already paying those levels anyway. Level 8 graduates are leaving the sector to work as primary school teachers or in therapies. Other levels are attracted to become SNAs with better hours, conditions and holidays. We are losing really good people who want to work in early years, and the result is that providers are closing down rooms. Tigers Childcare have informed parents of their struggles with staff, and services are closing. Chatterbox in Rockaby Park, for instance, announced last week that they're closing because of staff shortages. Early learning graduates should be treated equitably with school teachers at this stage. We need to keep and value the people who have years of experience in childcare but don't have degrees. We need to offer more training, support more opportunities, and there is a very strong argument for core funding covering staff costs. If early learning and childcare is an essential public service, we have to start treating it as such. And then on to core funding. It is working for some, but for others it really isn't. And I fear the government underestimates how precarious the situation is and how many providers are on the verge of pulling out of core funding. The 15% increase in core funding doesn't translate into 15% for services. I'm told the overall uplift for services is about 2.5%. And the government is right to freeze fees at 2019 levels for parents. I really believe that. But if we're going to do that, then we have to take into consideration the increased operating costs over the last 5 years. They can't expect services to absorb those losses when they know it's not a high-profit sector for most. Core funding increases are not enough to cover the additional costs of recruitment, retention and admin. There isn't enough funding for baby rooms, and where does quality come into all of this? And there are flaws that need to be rectified. The fact that new services can set their fees, but existing services can't increase theirs is creating problems and tension. And look, I very much believe in core funding. As a model, it works, but it has to adapt, and it needs further investment, it needs further funding, it needs further partnership. Because right now, Minister, there is too much rigidity and there isn't enough trust. We need short and long-term solutions to staffing. And this really is a ticking time bomb. All the signs are there for us to read. Room closures, service closures, ECCE operators struggling to survive. Every service and every place matters.
Thank you, Grandma. And Tara the Hull, Kieran O'Mead.
Thank you, Cathaoirleach, and thank you, Senator Curry. I'm taking this commencement matter for the Minister for Children. I'd like to thank Senator Curry for raising this important issue and for offering me the opportunity to respond. Ensuring access to high-quality, affordable early learning and childcare is a key priority for Government. Various data sources provide evidence that the supply of early learning and childcare is increasing in terms of number of services opening and the number of places and hours of provision that services are offering. Sector profile data shows an 8% increase in enrolments nationally between 2022 and 23, with increases in enrolments in Dublin area ranging from 5% in Fingal to 14% in Dún Laoghaire for the same period. Data from core funding shows an increase in 3% in the number of hours provision being delivered between September 2022 and September 2023, with capacity increases of approximately 6% to be funded through core funding from this coming September. TUSLA registration data from 2023 shows the largest increase in early learning and childcare services in a number of years, a smaller number of closures and a net increase of 129 in the overall number of services nationally. That's an increase of 129. The trend in growth has been observed in the first 5 months of 2024. Specifically, the data from TUSLA and the numbers of closures and new services opening from the end of May 2024 shows that so far in 2024, there has been a net increase of 7 early learning and services such as creches and preschools, and 24 standalone school-age childcare services across the country. According to these TUSLA data over the period January to May 2024, 4 early learning and care services opened in Dublin and 3 closed, while 5 standalone school-age childcare services opened in Dublin and none closed. Minister O'Gorman acknowledges that some parents continue to have difficulty in finding places for their children, in part due to the progress that has been achieved in relation to affordability with the introduction of the fee freeze through core funding and the expansion of the National Childcare Scheme. To this end, his department is progressing a range of actions to ensure the supply of early learning and childcare is aligned with demand, with work in this area led by the new supply management unit that he established earlier this year. In addition, as well as significant growth in capacity that has been funded through the core funding scheme, core funding has improved the stability of funding to providers and sustainability. The funding available through core funding has increased each year since the scheme was first introduced and will reach 331 million for year 3 of the scheme, with every provider in contract for the scheme expected to benefit from significant increases in funding from September coming. As well as core funding, special supports are available from the department where a service is experiencing financial difficulty or has concerns about their viability, assessed through local city, county childcare committees. This support can take the form of assisting services with interpreting analysis of staff ratios and cash flows, as well as more specialised advice and support appropriate to individual circumstances. I would encourage any service experiencing financial difficulty and who would like support to contact their city and county childcare committee to access case management supports, and the contact details can be found on www.myccc.ie. So basically what the Minister is saying is that there has been an increase in overall in the services, and we have put in a substantial amount of money, so it is, and that will continue to increase.
Minister, I understand that, and thank you for your response. But as I said, core funding is working for some, but for others it isn't, and it's like a tale of two experiences, and I fear we're not listening to the people that are having difficulty. If you're a new service, then my experience is this isn't affecting you. But this is a sector where there isn't enough supply, and we do need to protect the services that are operating now. We want to keep them in the sector. And I completely accept that core funding works, but I think we're at a pinch point. I think in the next few weeks and months, we're going to see an increase of people either talking about pulling out of core funding or pulling out of core funding. I spoke to one service today who said core funding covers 15% of their business, and it's just not sustainable. So I accept these figures, but there is a bigger picture here, and I would ask that the Minister speaks to those operators like Cherry Blossom, Montessori and
Thank you.
Casnock. He knows the issues there because, like I said, every place counts.
Good Margaret. Minister, good Margaret.